The old ornate box sat on Priscilla Presley's desk, gathering a thin layer of dust that mirrored the passage of time. It wasn't just any box, it was the one Elvis had given her years ago, filled with small, treasured trinkets from their early days. A dried rose from their first date, a tiny Silveroid of them laughing in the sunshine. She rarely opened it anymore. The memories, though beautiful, were often laced with a bittersweet ache, a quiet reminder of a love that had burned so brightly, and then just as suddenly extinguished. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon in Graceland, a place that was both her former home and a monument to a man who still captivated millions. Lisa Marie, her daughter, was on tour, and the mansion felt vast and still. The only sounds, the distant hum of the air conditioning and the soft rustle of leaves outside the window. Priscilla found herself drifting, as she often did, into thoughts of Elvis. It had been decades since his passing, but his presence, his legend, still permeated every corner of her life. She'd made peace with their story, or so she thought. She'd built a life, embraced her role as a mother, an actress, and a guardian of Elvis's legacy. Yet a part of her always wondered about the unspoken words, the lingering feelings that had been swallowed by the spotlight and the pressures of their extraordinary lives. Today, something was different. A subtle nudge, a whisper from the past, seemed to draw her gaze to the forgotten box. Maybe it was the way the afternoon sun hit the polished mahogany, revealing the dust, making her feel a sudden urge to clean, to refresh. Or maybe it was simply time for something to be revealed. She reached for the box, her fingers tracing the intricate carvings on its lid. The wood felt cool beneath her touch. With a soft click, the latch gave way, and she lifted the lid. Inside, the usual collection of trinkets lay nestled on velvet, but beneath them, something new, something she hadn't seen in all these years, caught her eye. It wasn't large, just a simple manila envelope, slightly yellowed with age, tucked beneath a stack of old concert programs. Her heart gave a little jolt. A manila envelope. It wasn't tied with a ribbon or sealed with wax. Just a plain, unassuming envelope. Her name, Scylla, was written on it in a familiar, sweeping hand. Elvis's handwriting. Her breath caught in her throat. This felt like him, quiet and intimate, hidden away. She picked up the envelope, her fingers trembling slightly. It felt thick, substantial, as if it held more than just a single sheet of paper. There was no date on the front, just her name, a silent testament to its intended recipient. For a moment she hesitated. Opening it felt like opening a door to a past she had meticulously, carefully sealed shut. Was she ready for whatever secrets it might hold? Was she ready to revisit the raw emotions of their divorce, the pain, the regret, the love that had somehow tangled itself in all of it? She took a deep breath. The scent of old paper and faint cologne, Elvis's cologne, she imagined, seeming to emanate from the envelope. Her curiosity, stronger than her apprehension, won out. This was a direct message from Elvis, from a time when their love was fracturing, but perhaps not entirely broken. It was a chance to hear his voice, not through a song or an old interview, but through his own private words, words meant only for her. With a slow, deliberate movement, she slid her finger under the flap of the envelope and carefully, gently opened it. The silence of the room deepened, as if the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for the secrets within to be revealed. Priscilla's fingers trembled as she reached inside the manila envelope. It wasn't a single sheet of paper, as she'd initially thought. It was a stack, perhaps 10 or 12 pages, folded neatly, secured with a tarnished silver paperclip. The paper felt heavy, good quality, not just a casual note. As she pulled the pages out, she saw the distinctive blue ink fading slightly with time, but still clear and strong. It was definitely his handwriting, unmistakable, bold, yet with a certain vulnerability in the way some letters sloped or hesitated. She laid the pages on the polished desk, smoothing them out carefully. The first page was dated August 16th, 1972. Her eyes widened. August 16th, 1972. That date hit her like a physical blow. It was just a few months after their final separation, and a little over a year before their divorce was finalized in October 1973. This wasn't a letter written in the heat of an argument, nor was it a cold legal document. This was written during that strange limbo period when their marriage was effectively over, but the legal ties still bound them. Time of raw emotion, confusion, and lingering hope. Perhaps her gaze fell on the first line and her breath hitched. "My dearest Scylla," just those 3 words written in his familiar hand were enough to transport her back. She could almost hear his deep voice, laced with that distinct southern drawl, speaking them. It was intimate, gentle, full of the tenderness she remembered so well. She took a moment, letting the weight of the moment settle over her. This wasn't just a letter. It was a conversation postponed for decades. Finally, being offered, she leaned back in her chair, the afternoon sun warming her face through the window. The world outside Graceland, with its endless stream of tourists and flashing cameras, felt miles away. In this room, in this moment, it was just her and Elvis, a private communion across the chasm of time and loss. She needed to be ready, truly ready, to absorb every word, every nuance. But how had it remained hidden for so long? She'd opened this box countless times over the years, picking through the mementos, sometimes sharing a story with Lisa Marie. Had it always been there, just tucked away under the programs, waiting for the right moment to surface? Or had it been placed there later by someone else, perhaps his father Vernon, or even his housekeeper, who knew the depth of their connection? No, she decided. This was Elvis's hand, his secret. He must have put it there himself, perhaps intending for her to find it much sooner, or perhaps waiting for a time when the pain had dulled enough for its message to truly resonate. She thought about the state of their relationship in August 1972. They were separated, living apart. The media was swirling with rumors. There was so much heartbreak, so much public scrutiny, so much misunderstanding. He was struggling with his own demons, and she was trying to find her footing, to build a life independent of the overwhelming presence of Elvis Presley. There was anger, yes, and frustration. But beneath it all, she knew there was still a deep, abiding love. It was a love that couldn't survive the spotlight, the constant demands, the temptations of his life. But it was love nonetheless. And now, here it was, a tangible piece of that love. A message from the man she had married, the father of her child, her first and most profound love. It was a chance to see into his heart, to understand his perspective during a time of immense emotional turmoil for both of them. A chance to heal, perhaps, old wounds, to find closure she hadn't known she needed. She picked up the first page again, her thumb brushing over the blue ink. The words seemed to almost hum with a quiet energy. She took a deep breath, pushed aside the lingering questions of how it was found, and focused only on the words before her. This was Elvis, reaching out, a voice from the past, whispering his truth. She was ready, more than ready. She needed to hear what he had to say. Before diving deeper into Elvis's words, Priscilla instinctively paused, needing to ground herself in her present. Her life, now in her 70s, was rich and full, a testament to her resilience. She was a successful businesswoman, the driving force behind Graceland's preservation and its evolution into a global phenomenon. She was a mother, and more recently, a grandmother, finding immense joy in Lisa Murray's children, Riley and Benjamin. She had built a career in acting, proving to herself and the world that she was more than just Elvis's ex-wife. Yet the shadow of Elvis, or rather the light of his legacy, was ever present. Every fan she met, every interview she gave, every walk through Graceland brought him back. Sometimes it was comforting, a warm blanket of shared history. Other times it was a sharp pang, a reminder of what could have been or what they had lost. She looked around her office at Graceland. It was filled with awards and mementos, not just of Elvis, but of her own achievements. A framed poster, from her time on Dallas, a plaque from a charity she supported, photographs of her family. She had fought hard to carve out her own identity, to step out of the giant shadow he cast, and she had succeeded. She was Scylla, a strong, independent woman. The letter lying open on her desk threatened to unravel that carefully constructed piece. It stirred feelings she thought she had long since tamed. The girl who married Elvis at 21, the one who navigated the whirlwind of his fame, was still there, somewhere beneath the layers of experience and wisdom. And that girl was still deeply connected to the man who had written these words. She often reflected on the public perception of their divorce. It was painted as a tragedy, a failure, and in many ways it was, but it was also an act of self-preservation. For both of them, she needed to find her own voice, to breathe independently. He, consumed by his music and increasingly by his personal struggles, couldn't give her the life she needed. She knew, deep down, that their paths had diverged not out of a lack of love, but because their individual needs had become too great for their shared life to contain. She had processed the anger, the sadness, the what-ifs. She had reached a point of understanding, even forgiveness for the way things had ended. She had always spoken of him with reverence and affection, acknowledging the profound impact he had on her life. Their bond, solidified by their daughter Lisa Marie, had remained unbroken, even through the divorce. And beyond, they were family always. She remembered those quiet moments after the divorce, when they would talk on the phone, sharing stories about Lisa, laughing about old times, sometimes even crying together. There was no animosity, just a quiet sadness for what couldn't be. But a letter like this, written at such a vulnerable time, could reopen old wounds, or perhaps offer a deeper healing. What if he expressed regrets she had never imagined? What if he revealed a pain she hadn't fully grasped? The public narrative of their split was always simplified, but the reality, she knew, was complex, layered with unspoken emotions. She thought of the thousands of fans who visited Graceland every day, who still grieved his loss, who saw her as a direct link to the legend. They often asked about their love story, their marriage. She always told them the truth, or at least her truth, that their love was real, powerful, and ultimately a victim of circumstances beyond their control. But she never spoke of the raw, intimate details of the divorce itself, the private anguish. This letter was those details. It was his version, his raw feelings laid bare. She felt a profound responsibility to approach it with an open heart, ready for whatever truths it contained. This wasn't just for her. It was, in a way, a missing piece of their story. A final, intimate conversation with the man who had been her everything. With a deep sigh, she picked up the first page again, her fingers tracing the words, steeling herself for the journey back in time, ready to read his heart. Priscilla picked up the first page, her gaze fixed on the date. August 16th, 1972. A shiver ran down her spine. The words on the page seemed to shimmer slightly, as if alive with the emotion of the moment. They were "My dearest Scylla," the letter began. "It's late, and the house is quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes a man think too much, and all I can think about." Priscilla's eyes blurred for a moment. That quiet? She knew that quiet. The silence of Graceland after everyone had gone to bed, or when he was on the road alone. It was a silence that could amplify every doubt, every regret. He was alone, just like she was, processing the fragments of their life together. It was passion, and laughter, and sometimes, it was tears, but I keep holding on to in the dark hours. A tear escaped and traced a path down her cheek. He remembered the fire. He remembered the realness. It wasn't just a show, not to him, not to her. This wasn't the stoic, larger-than-life Elvis the world saw. This was the vulnerable man, the one she had loved, wrestling with his emotions in the quiet of the night. Things I couldn't say out loud. Not fully, not without my voice breaking or my pride getting in the way. Her heart ached. The honesty in his words was almost unbearable. He was admitting his struggle, his inability to articulate the depth of his feelings in person. This was the true Elvis, stripped bare of his public persona, vulnerable and raw. He wasn't trying to manipulate her or win her back. He was simply trying to express his truth. "'Cause it's the face of the woman who understood me better than anyone else in this world." Priscilla gasped softly. Understood him better than anyone. He truly believed that, and it was true. She had seen beyond the jumpsuits and the millions of fans. She had seen the sensitive, complex man, the artist, the deeply religious soul, the insecure boy. She had loved all of him. They say love fades maybe for some, but I'm here to tell you, Scylla, for me it hasn't. Not the kind of love we had, the deep foundational kind. It's changed, maybe, like a river changes course, but the water's still flowing. And it's still flowing for you. The tears were coming freely now, hot and fast. This was what she had always hoped, always suspected, but had never heard him say so explicitly, so clearly, that his love hadn't faded, that it had merely changed its course. It was a profound validation of their connection, a balm to the unspoken wounds of their divorce. She paused, taking a ragged breath. The weight of these initial words was immense. He was laying his soul bare, confessing an enduring love that had survived their separation. It wasn't a romantic plea, not in a traditional sense, but a testament to the unique bond they shared. She felt a profound sense of gratitude and a deeper understanding of the depth of his feelings during that difficult period. He had carried this truth just as she had carried hers, and now, almost 50 years later, it was finally revealed. Priscilla wiped her eyes, took a moment to compose herself, and then continued to the next page. Elvis's blue ink continued to flow, carrying her back in time to the very beginning of their extraordinary story. "Do you remember Germany, Scylla?" the letter read. "And then, there you were, like a bright light." Priscilla smiled through her tears. She remembered she was only 14, and he was 24 already. A global sensation. Their meeting had felt like destiny, a fairy tale, almost too good to be true. He was the most famous man in the world, and she was just a high school student from Texas, living with her military family in Germany. "I knew I shouldn't have gotten involved with someone so young," he continued, his honesty piercing. "And Lord knows my daddy and the colonel sure let me hear about it. But I couldn't help myself. You had this way about you, Scylla. A quiet strength. You listened. You saw me not just Elvis Presley, but me, the man. You saw the insecurities, the dreams, the fears. This was profound." For years, she had wondered if he truly appreciated that she saw past the facade, past the millions of screaming fans. To hear him confirm it in his own words filled her with a strange mix of sorrow and relief. He had known. He had recognized her unique ability to see him for who he truly was. "You learned to shoot pool, ride horses, deal with the Memphis Mafia. You became a part of my world, my family." She remembered those chaotic, exhilarating early days at Graceland. She left behind her normal teenage life for a world she could barely comprehend. There were endless sleepovers with his male friends, movie nights that lasted until dawn, the constant presence of bodyguards and assistants. It was overwhelming, but she was so in love, so eager to be a part of his life, that she adapted. He was right. She learned to navigate that strange, beautiful, isolating world. I remember our first kiss, Relly kiss, that night on the couch, watching TV, and how nervous I was. Even me, Elvis Presley. "Scylla, you were the most beautiful bride I'd ever seen. You looked like an angel." I remember thinking, standing there at the altar, that I was the luckiest man alive. I really believed it with all my heart. The image of their wedding day, so meticulously planned and yet so rushed, flooded her mind. The simple ceremony in Las Vegas, surrounded by their closest friends and family. The joy, the overwhelming sense of commitment, the promise of forever. He had looked so handsome, so proud. To know he remembered those feelings, the deep conviction of being the luckiest man, brought a fresh wave of emotion. Lisa, Marie, their daughter. The ultimate bond. He loved her fiercely with every fiber of his being. Priscilla remembered his excitement, his trepidation, his overwhelming joy at becoming a father. It was a love that transcended everything else. A pure and unconditional devotion. Priscilla paused again, her mind awash in the vivid memories these words conjured. He was remembering the good times, the pure, unadulterated happiness. He was acknowledging her strength, her beauty, her unique place in his life. It was a powerful reminder of the love that had formed the foundation of their relationship. A love that, despite everything, had remained vibrant in his memory. It made the upcoming chapters, which she knew would delve into the painful parts, even more poignant. He was showing her what he cherished, before revealing what he regretted. Priscilla took a shaky breath and continued reading. The warmth of the early memories slowly gave way to a shift in tone. As Elvis's letter began to address the challenges that had ultimately fractured their fairy tale, she knew exactly what he meant. The beautiful monster that was the perfect description. His fame was a living, breathing entity that devoured everything in its path, including their marriage. I was always on the road of, always tai, a four. Edis is of. She remembered those periods of absence, the long tours, the constant demands on his time and energy. And when he returned, he was often a different person, withdrawn, tired, sometimes distant. She had felt it then, the emotional void, the growing chasm between them. To hear him admit his awareness of it, his regret was both painful and validating. I pushed you away, Scylla. I know I did. Not intentionally, not out of malice, but out of fear, maybe, or just plain stupidity. I was surrounded by people, but I was so lonely inside. And I didn't know how to let you in. Not fully, not when I felt like I was losing control of everything else. The admission of loneliness, despite being surrounded by his entourage, resonated deeply with Priscilla. She had seen it, that isolated look in his eyes, even in a crowded room. He was the king, but he was also a prisoner of his own success. He had struggled with the weight of expectation, the pressure to always be on. And she, his wife, had often been a casualty of that struggle. It was a distraction, a fleeting escape from the pressure, a momentary filling of an emptiness I didn't know how to name. Priscilla flinched. The women. This was the most painful part of their shared history, the betrayal that had chipped away at her trust and her self-worth. To hear him confess his weakness, his regret, after all these years was a heavy burden. It didn't erase the pain, but it offered a measure of understanding, a glimpse into the internal torment that had driven his actions. He was admitting his failings, not making excuses, but offering context for his struggles. I saw the pain in your eyes, Scylla, and I hated myself for putting it there. You deserved a husband who was present, faithful, and fully yours. And I couldn't be that man. Not then. I was lost, trying to find my way through a maze of expectations and temptations, and I took my eye off the most precious thing I had, the raw self-condemnation. He understood the depth of her, hurt the injustice of his actions. He was acknowledging his responsibility in the breakdown of their marriage, not shifting blame. This was the Elvis she sometimes glimpsed in their private moments, the one who was capable of deep introspection and profound regret. I remember the fights, the arguments, how we tried to talk to fix things, but it felt like we were speaking different languages. Or maybe I just wasn't listening hard enough. I was so caught up in my own world, my own struggles, that I couldn't see yours clearly. And that's on me, Scylla. He remembered the fights, the attempts at communication that inevitably dissolved into frustration and tears. It was a cycle they couldn't break. He was right. They had drifted apart, becoming two separate planets, orbiting the same sun, but unable to connect. He was taking full responsibility, which was a revelation in itself. This wasn't the proud king. This was a man confessing his failures to the woman he had loved and inadvertently hurt. The letter continued, each word a step further into the emotional minefield of their separation. Priscilla could almost feel the weight of his regret, the profound sadness that permeated his handwriting. And then, Scylla, came the hardest part, the realization that we couldn't make it work, not anymore. I remember the day you told me you were leaving. Even though we'd been struggling, even though we both knew it was coming, hearing you say it out loud, it was crushing. The immense courage it had taken for her to speak those words, to admit defeat in a battle she had fought so hard to win. She remembered his face, a mixture of shock and deep sorrow. It had been agonizing for both of them. He had begged her. She remembered his desperation, his heartfelt pleas, and she too had been torn. Her love for him was still there, a deep, persistent ember. But she also knew, with a clarity born of pain, that staying would mean losing herself entirely. She needed to breathe, to grow, to find her own identity. It was a choice between her own survival and the impossible dream of making their marriage work in that tumultuous environment. But you were right, Scylla, you were strong-willed. That sometimes, even when you love someone with all your heart, you have to let them go. For their own good and maybe for yours too. You needed to find your own path, your own voice, and I was so caught up in my own mess. I was holding you back. This admission struck Priscilla deeply. He understood. He had eventually understood her need for independence, her craving for a life where she wasn't merely an extension of his fame. He recognized that his world, for all its glitter, was suffocating her. It was a selfless acknowledgement, a testament to his underlying love for her happiness, even if it meant his own pain. The divorce, it felt like a public execution. Everyone had an opinion, everyone wanted to know the details, and all I wanted was to protect you. It hurt me to see your name dragged through the papers, to hear people speculate about our private pain. I wanted to scream at the world to leave us alone. She remembered the media frenzy, the relentless intrusion into their personal tragedy. It was a brutal time. He had tried to protect her, she knew. Despite his own public image being under constant scrutiny, his first instinct was always to shield his family. His frustration and helplessness were palpable in his words. And that's when I truly knew that what we had wasn't broken, not completely. It had just changed form. Priscilla vividly recalled that day in court. Quiet, respectful atmosphere, the shared tears, the hand he had held as they left the courtroom. There was a unique tenderness between them, even in the midst of their legal separation. They were no longer husband and wife, but their bond as parents and as two people who had shared an extraordinary chapter of their lives remained intact. He had seen the understanding in her eyes just as she had seen the sorrow in his. But the love, Scylla, the love was still there. It had just found a new way to exist. His words validated everything she had felt that day, the shared grief, the enduring affection. They had walked out of that courtroom, not as adversaries, but as partners in pain, connected by an unbreakable thread. This wasn't a bitter divorce. It was a heart-wrenching parting of ways, with love still lingering in the air. His final observation for the section, that the love had found a new way to exist, was a powerful and incredibly heartwarming revelation. It meant that even then, in the midst of their separation, he recognized the enduring nature of their bond. As Priscilla turned to the next page, the focus of Elvis's letter shifted, and a gentle warmth spread through her. The anguish of the divorce began to recede, replaced by the profound, unconditional love he held for their daughter. "And then there's Lisa Marie," the letter began, his handwriting becoming a little softer, more flowing, as if writing her name brought him immediate comfort. "Our sweet bird, she's the greatest gift you ever gave me, Scylla. And sometimes when I'm feeling lost, just thinking about her, or seeing her little face, it reminds me of what's good and pure in this world." Priscilla's heart swelled with a familiar ache. Lisa Marie was indeed their greatest joy, the living embodiment of their love. Elvis's devotion to his daughter was legendary, fierce, and all-consuming. He adored her, spoiling her with gifts, but more importantly, showering her with affection and attention. Whenever he could. I know the divorce was hard on her, even at her young age. Kids feel things even when they don't have the words for it, and it kills me to think I contributed to any pain in her heart. That's a burden I'll carry, Scylla, but I promise you, I will always, always. He had carried that burden, she knew. He'd tried his best to minimize the disruption for Lisa to be present despite their separation. He bought her miniature cars, a golf cart, flew her to Las Vegas to see his shows. Anything to make her happy, to compensate for the fracturing of their family. And he kept his promise. Lisa Marie was always his priority. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you. A fresh wave of tears stung Priscilla's eyes. This was perhaps one of the most heartwarming acknowledgments in the entire letter. To hear him praise her as a mother, to recognize the sacrifices she had made, the emotional labor she had invested in raising Lisa Marie, was profoundly moving. She had always strived to be a good mother, to give Lisa a childhood that was as normal as possible. Given their extraordinary circumstances, she often felt alone in that endeavor, especially after the divorce, carrying the primary responsibility for their daughter's well-being. This was a validation she hadn't realized. She needed. I miss our family dinners, Scylla. I miss seeing you and Lisa at the table. Just being a normal family for a little while. I missed reading her bedmonths, when it was just the three of us. Those were the times when I felt most like myself, most at peace. He missed the normalcy, the simple, everyday moments that were so rare in his life. The image of the three of them, a complete family unit in those fleeting moments of peace, brought a poignant beauty to his words. He craved that simple domesticity even amidst his global fame. And I hope one day we can truly be friends, good friends, for her sake, for our sake. This promise, this declaration of enduring family, even after the divorce, was the ultimate comfort. It echoed the reality of their relationship in the years that followed. They did become friends. They co-parented with love and respect. They remained connected, sharing holidays, special occasions, and most importantly, their profound love for Lisa Marie. He had envisioned that future, that continued connection even in the midst of their pain. I want her to know always how much I love her, and I want her to know that her mother is a strong, incredible woman. Please, Scylla, make sure she never doubts that she knows how much I cherish her and how much I cherish you for bringing her into my life. His concern for Lisa Marie's understanding of their love and his unwavering admiration for Priscilla as her mother was the purest expression of his heart. It was a message not just to Priscilla, but through her to their daughter. It was a message that transcended time and loss, a testament to the power of a father's love. This chapter of the letter was a bittersweet reminder of the beautiful family they had created, and the unbreakable bond that would forever tie them together. Priscilla's hands were trembling slightly as she reached the final pages of the letter. The earlier parts had been a roller coaster of emotion, from the sting of old hurts to the warmth of cherished memories and the profound love for their daughter. Now she felt a sense of anticipation, wondering how he would bring this deeply personal confession to a close. I don't know what the future holds for you, Scylla, the letter continued, his tone turning more reflective, almost wistful, but I hope it's everything you ever dreamed of. You deserve happiness. You deserve a life that's your own, where you can shine in your own light, without being overshadowed by mine. And if this separation, if this new path, helps you find that, then, maybe, just maybe, it was worth the pain. He wanted her to be happy. He genuinely wished for her well-being, even if it meant a life without him as her husband. This was a testament to the selfless aspect of his love, a desire for her to thrive, to find her own fulfillment, unburdened by his complex world. It was a profound act of love in itself, letting go for the other person's good. I'm not gonna lie, Scylla, there's a part of me, a deep selfish part, that will always wish things could have been different, that I could have been a better man, a better husband, that I could have given you the life you deserved within our marriage. But wishes are just wishes, aren't they? This raw admission of his lingering regret, his acknowledgement of his shortcomings, was heartbreaking. He wasn't absolving himself. He was articulating the painful truth of what he wished he could have been for her. It showed his self-awareness, his understanding of the role he played in their breakup. "I'll always carry you in my heart, Scylla. A piece of me will always be tied to you, to the girl I met in Germany, to the woman I married, to the mother of my child. You shaped me, you loved me when I was unlovable, and you taught me what true devotion looks like." He saw her, truly saw her as an enduring force in his life, a part of his very being. He credited her with shaping him, with loving him unconditionally. This was a man reflecting on the profound impact she had on his life, acknowledging her influence and the depth of her love. It was a powerful, moving tribute. "I hope you find someone, Scylla, who can give you all the things I couldn't. Someone who can be there for you day in and day out. Someone who cherishes you in the way you deserve to be cherished. And I hope they know how lucky they are to have you." This was the hardest part to read his Blunhouse. It was incredibly generous, incredibly painful, and yet another profound expression of his love. He truly wanted her to have the life she deserved, even if it meant seeing her with another. It spoke volumes about his understanding of her needs and his capacity for selfless affection. "Just remember me kinds, the laughter, the love. Don't let the sadness of our ending overshadow the beauty of our beginning, and know that no matter where life takes us, you'll always be my Memphian angel." Memphian angel, the old nickname. It brought a soft, sad smile to her lips. It was a term of endearment he used only for her, a nod to their shared history in Memphis. It was his way of saying she belonged to him in a way, even if their marriage was dissolving. "And tell Lisa, always, that her daddy loved her more than words can say, and that he's always watching over her. Always." The letter ended with this final poignant message about Lisa Marie, his ultimate concern. It was a testament to his enduring paternal love, a promise from beyond the grave that he would always be there for his little girl. He hadn't asked for anything, not a reunion, not a second chance. He had simply laid bare his heart, confessed his regrets, expressed his endearing love for her and their daughter, and wished her ultimate happiness. It was a letter of closure, of understanding, of profound and bittersweet affection. Priscilla sat motionless, holding the final page. The quiet of the room was now filled with the echo of his voice, his emotions. He had truly, honestly poured out his soul, and in doing so, he had given her a gift beyond measure. A deeper understanding of his heart, a confirmation of his enduring love, and a sense of peace. Apose and pose, Priscilla sat for a long time, the stack of pages still in her trembling hands. The sun had begun to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the room, but she barely noticed. Her mind was reeling, processing the profound impact of Elvis's words. It was as if he had been sitting right there with her, whispering his truths across the decades. The letter wasn't a demand or a plea. It was a confession, a lament, and ultimately a testament to a love that had transcended the confines of marriage and divorce. He had acknowledged her pain, admitted his failings, and reaffirmed his unwavering love for her, and especially for Lisa Marie. It was a release, a balm to wounds she hadn't realized were still aching. She thought about the common narrative of their split, the tragic end to a fairy tale. But his letter revealed a much more nuanced, compassionate truth. It was a story of two people deeply in love who simply couldn't make their extraordinary lives fit together. It was a testament to his human vulnerability, a side of him the world rarely saw, but she knew so intimately. A soft knock on the door startled her. It was May, the housekeeper, coming to ask about dinner. Priscilla looked up, blinking as if waking from a deep dream. "Not yet, May," she managed, her voice a little husky. "Just give me a few more minutes." May nodded, understandingly, and quietly retreated. Priscilla carefully gathered the pages, placing them back into the manila envelope. This was a treasure, a sacred document. It wasn't something to be shared publicly. Not right now, maybe, never. It was too intimate, too raw, too profoundly personal. This was for her and perhaps one day for Lisa Marie, when the time was right. She walked over to a small antique desk drawer. She rarely used a place where she kept only her most cherished private mementos, not the ones for display, but the ones for her heart. She placed the envelope inside, knowing it was now safe, waiting for whenever she needed to revisit his words, his voice. As darkness settled outside, Priscilla rose and walked to the window, looking out over the manicured lawns of Graceland. The mansion, a symbol of Elvis's enduring legend, now felt different. It felt lighter. The weight of unspoken questions, of lingering doubts about their past had been lifted. She understood him more fully now, not just as the rock and roll icon, but as the man who grappled with his flaws, who loved fiercely, and who carried the pain of his choices. This letter didn't rewrite their history, but it deepened it, adding layers of understanding and compassion. What did this mean for her now? It meant a profound sense of peace. It meant that the love they shared, though it took a different form, had been real, powerful, and reciprocated even through the heartbreak. It meant that his last wishes for her happiness, for Lisa Marie's knowledge of his love, had always been honored. The next morning, Priscilla walked through Graceland with a renewed sense of purpose. She greeted the staff, exchanged pleasantries with early visitors, but internally a quiet strength hummed within her. The letter had given her a final, beautiful piece of Elvis, a closure she hadn't realized. She was missing. She knew his legacy would continue to thrive. She would continue to be its guardian. But now she carried a deeper, more personal understanding of the man behind the myth. A man who, even in separation, held her and their daughter in the deepest chambers of his heart. The story of Elvis and Priscilla would always be complex, but now it was also complete, woven with a final, heartwarming thread of enduring love and profound understanding. The dust had been wiped away, and the true heart of their story finally was revealed.